All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us today on Ryan and Nate's Business Podcast. Today's goal is to have you get to know Ryan a little bit better. We are going to interview him and learn a little bit about his story. So, Ryan, I wrote a little bio for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit you with it.
Great.
Ryan is the owner of two companies, Beltway Air Conditioning and Heating and Atlas Business Consulting, LLC. Atlas is the parent company of this podcast. This is why we're doing this. He lives in Halethorpe, Maryland with his wife and son. He grew up in the trades and always wanted to own his own company. He started his first company at the ripe age of 22 with the goal of working on the company, not in it every day. And he's one of the best leaders I know at creating systems that release employees to do what they do best. He has great hair, wears shoes only when he has to, and is a general badass hustler and risk taker. He also happens to be my boss and co-host of this podcast, and the plan today is to get to know his story a little bit better. So, Ryan, thanks for subjecting yourself to questions, because this is where you and I get to learn what it's like to be a guest, which will ultimately make us better interviewers for the guests that we have on this show.
Yeah, I feel gross after that introduction, but I'll take it. Thank
you. Gross. Okay. Well, hopefully I don't make all our guests feel gross.
I just don't like talking about myself. So this whole episode,
yeah. Great. This is why the partnership here works. Yeah. So we're going to start with an easy question. The easy question that we're going to start with is, what have you failed at recently?
I would say the thing I failed at recently is the way I approached maintenance agreements. So, I own Beltway Air Conditioning and Heating out of Hanover, Maryland, and we have another location in Arbutus, Maryland / Halethorpe. It depends on where you put it, but it's 21227. And or you can put Baltimore. There's 3 different addresses you can put on the package, and it will show up at the store. So that's my primary gig, and then the second gig is Atlas Business Consulting. But with the heating and air stuff, I don't know how many employees. Well over a dozen. I think 15 or 16 as of right now. So what I failed at was the maintenance agreements. So we have about 800 customers that we put on a routine maintenance. We come out twice a year, check your system, yada, yada, yada. And I think the biggest fail was the numbers came back for the last 2 months. And, we got in the first month, we got to make a couple adjustments. Second month, the numbers were still bad. So with maintenance agreements, they're just supposed to pay for themselves. If you do a good maintenance on something, the customer's got to have to spend a couple dollars, not, nothing insane, but like hey, just this, while doing the maintenance, we found this wrong. I think you should, repair it before summertime or winter. And then they repair it and yada, yada. Well, looking at the numbers, it was like, well, these guys are barely paying for themselves when they go out there. And that was where the fail was. And the fail wasn't, I need to teach my guys, or my guys aren't doing enough, or I need to teach my guys how to, communicate to the customer if something's wrong. Like, none of that was the fail. The fail was on my end. And my end was I didn't have the proper data when sending them out. So the average age of the system in the last 2.5 months has been a HVAC system, a heating and air conditioning system, from 2018. It's 2023, so really not that old piece of equipment. If they're not that old, there's not much to maintain. There's not as much things to do. So that's where I failed. I failed to have proper data, and now we're getting all that. And so for next season, we know it's a slow week. Let's build up maintenances that are really old, like older systems, because they're going to have more things to do on. And if we need money, that's probably a more likely way to do it, opposed to, we have 800 customers. Just start calling the list and seeing who needs maintenance right now. So being more strategic in that. And I think the biggest lesson I learned from the failure was that data will tell you anything you want to know, and whatever you're already thinking. So, data is good up to a point, but it's not I think people live by data. And sometimes your job, like we have a friend that does data for PayPal, right? Like that's his job. But, you know, sometimes people get lost in the data and it doesn't mean what it actually means. And if you take the big picture view of it, you'll actually find out some real value in there. And sometimes people just grab data to tell them what they already want to know. So I can get into a whole podcast about data, and I know it's a little confusing because it can totally go one way or another. But at the end of the day, I failed at not having good data. But I also believe that data is not the almighty dollar or like the almighty ruler. Because if I just looked at the data, I would have been at my guys' throats like, hey, or at least with the data that I had, like, hey, guys, you're not paying for yourselves when you go out here, yada, 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 blah, 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 right? So, yeah.
No, that's,
all right,
that's
next
good.
question.
Well, I was going to say, I think that I think we'll probably hear some version of this question at other times in this podcast when we interview people, because I think it's a great question. It tells me two things about you. One is that you're not just doing the way they've always been done. You're taking risks. You're strategizing. You're looking for on the horizon as the business owner. Casting vision and going somewhere. So that requires taking risk, which means you might fail at something. And I think it's important to be living on our edge. And that might mean that we might fail. And I think it's not a question that we should be scared of. That question of like, what did you fail at recently? We don't have to be perfect. That's not the goal. The goal is not to always to be so safe that you never make a mistake. You took a risk. And then the other thing it tells me is that you're a learner. You're someone who doesn't make excuses, and you learn from your mistakes and you learn from the failure, which means inevitably you're going to get better at it. So what started out as a failure, you get to have success at it eventually as you keep working it. And sometimes it's the second time you try, sometimes it's the third, fourth, or fifth time you try, or like Thomas Edison, it's after like 10,000 tries. But if you got a goal that's worth going for, then it's worth failing a bunch of times to get there. So.
Yeah. And I think I'm a huge fan of you don't know what you don't know. And I think I live sometimes in the paralysis of like, I'm scared that I don't know what I don't know. And I constantly have to be out there learning because, you know, that box of no one knows, it can be scary sometimes. So if you always have an open mind, you're more than likely to catch problems before they happen. Yeah.
So that's where you're at right now. That's the current failure that's in front of you. But let's let everyone know a little bit about where you came from. So you currently have two businesses, but you didn't start with two businesses. What was your first job?
My first job ever or first business?
All right, let's start with the first job. And then I also want to hear there's other businesses. We just told everyone you had two businesses, but yeah, there's more businesses. It goes back to the failure question too, I guess, too. But yeah, first, what was your first job?
My first job was, I think my first like real job other than like helping my dad on the weekends, which my dad is, at the time when I was younger, like 8, 9 years old, he was a house flipper. And he'd flip homes for a living. And he did it before it was cool. And, you know, before YouTube taught you how to do it. So then when YouTube came along and taught you how to do it, he got out of it. And now he does like bathroom remodels and kitchens.
So he had no competition at first, but then now he has a ton of competition. Yeah,
because every person anyway, I have a lot of opinions about people that do that stuff. But anyways, everyone who's a real estate guru or whatever. So my first real job, I think, it was called Andy's Kitchen. It's no longer in business. He sold it to someone, and then they had it on one of those Food Network shows because they were failing. And it still failed after the network show left.
What did you do in the business?
I just washed dishes, cooked up that sausage gravy, dog. You know what I mean? Like just boom.
The roots of greatness. Yeah, you're describing the roots of greatness, man. It was
canned gravy, and they were like, Ryan, your one job is to wash dishes, and if someone has sausage gravy, put it in the microwave for 5 minutes. And I was like, you got it. So not the most elegant place ever.
The sausage gravy is good. Some good stuff, man.
It was good. I love me some biscuits and gravy, man. Yeah.
What about their first? What about the first job or the first business venture then?
Okay, first business, it was called Beltway Blacktops, and I just had the entrepreneurial seizure when I was younger. I also needed to make more money, and with heating and air, go ahead.
You got to tell people what the entrepreneurial seizure is because they might not know.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there. With heating and air, I think I learned it very quickly. I knew when I was very young that I wanted to do heating and air conditioning. So I learned a lot about it. I grew up in a dysfunctional household, and I figured if I could learn how an air conditioner works, I could get out of my house. Well, I learned how an air conditioner works, and I still didn't get paid that much. So I was like, all right, well, I need more money. But I also had this desire in me to, do something where I'm part of leadership and own a business. Owning a business, kind of suit that fancy. So what I did, my dad said, you can seal driveways on the weekends. And I took that wildly seriously. I spent a lot of time, my generation was blessed to have YouTube. That was in the early years of YouTube. But I spent time learning about business, setting up a thing, I set the business up. I made cards, I made flyers, I made things, and I bought the stuff from Home Depot. I knocked on people's doors every Saturday, and I said, hey, can I seal your driveway? It's $125. And people would say yes or no. My first person ever, I went to their door, and he said, the effing baby's sleeping, and slammed the door in my face. And I said, wow, this is going to work out great. I just went to the next door, and I think a lot of people would have stopped right there. And it didn't help that I was in a no soliciting neighborhood, but whatever, who cares? It was the neighborhood next, next to mine. I didn't live in a neighborhood, but like the closest neighborhood, that's what it was. That's what I started doing. So I did that, and then it got a little bit more legit as time went on, and I got an opportunity. I got involved with a property manager, and he had a lot of work for me. And I just told my boss, I said, hey, I have a great opportunity in front of me to make thousands, and I need to take it. And that's what I did. I mean, I was paying for my own school. I was not great with money as it is. Not that I spent it on dumb stuff, but like I just never thought about like how to manage money. So I needed to take that opportunity, and I did. But then it failed because very lack of planning. You can't put seal coat on when it gets cold outside. So it's a completely summer job. Heating and air conditioning is pretty much a completely summer job too. Heaters don't break that often. So I was out of a job, and then, so I went up, and then I came crashing down as fast as I went up. But I learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I think I was 20 or 21 when that happened. Then I got a job doing solar. That crashed and burned. Then I went back to heating and air, and I didn't like the company I was working for. I thought they were terrible. Just on the way they organized things, and they messed with my pay and like, oh, you're still in training pay. And, we know I was a salesman for that company, and they're like, oh, I was expecting a $12,000 check, and they gave me a $300 training pay check. And, because they let me go early because I knew what I was doing. And that really, really hurt. So God works great in many ways. And I had a friend of mine from our church say, hey, man, I have 50 air conditioners and water heaters that need to be replaced in Section 8. It's in the hood, but if you can do it at this price, you have the job. And I was like, done. Like, what else was I going to say? No. I didn't have anything. I started, and that's when Beltway HVAC started, and I had nothing. And I was like, I have nothing to lose. I might as well go ahead and do this.
How many years ago was that where Beltway started?
Beltway started, I believe it was April of 2018. So I started out with Beltway Blacktops, then I went to Beltway HVAC, and then I went to Beltway Air Conditioning and Heating. And Beltway HVAC was just to get the gears rolling for the property that I did for our friend from Mosaic. And I didn't anticipate on having a business now where it's like, oh, there's trucks on the road, there's office staff, there's general managers, there's operations managers. Like, none of that was the intention when I first started Beltway HVAC. It was just, hey, there's a project to go do. I'm going to go do it. And I have a lot of fun stories because it was a 3-month process, and I had it all lined up, and the equipment didn't come. And there's more to the story than that, but I'll give you one of the best pieces of advice my dad ever gave me. The equipment didn't come, and I can get more into that story, yada, yada. And I had all my buddies from Heating and Air coming in and saying, hey, we're going to take off a week and do this project. And because I only had a little bit of time to complete the majority of it. And because the equipment didn't come, I had a couple buddies take vacation that they didn't actually have to take, and then, or weren't able to use to come help me on this. And it kind of just turned into a disaster from the beginning. And I remember sitting on the side of the building, and I'm just sitting there and I'm crying. And I call my dad and I tell him the whole situation. Like, the equipment didn't come. I got these guys lined up. Now they're not available and don't know how I'm going to get it in. The contractor's mad at me. I let my friend down, blah, blah, blah. And I was crying, and my dad said, hey, have you ever seen Toy Story? And I said, yeah. And he said, remember that scene where Buzz and Woody they're going down, and Woody says, Buzz, we're flying. And Buzz says, no, we're not flying. We're falling with style. My dad, that was one of the best advices he gave me, because that immediately got me right back up where I was going. And although I was falling, I knew I had to fall in style. We figured it out. I bought 2 vans. I took the money from that. I bought 2 vans. I gave a marketer $5,000, and now we're a multi-million-dollar company that everyone loves to work for, and I love coming to work every day. I don't work a day in my life.
What a story, dude.
Yeah. There's so much more to that story and so many more lessons, but that was the quickest I could get through it.
In your intro, I call you a hustler, and I mean that with total admiration. Like, it takes hustle to get some of these things done. Like, knocking on doors in a no soliciting zone. It's asking forgiveness rather than permission. A little bit
from a pastor, yeah.
You just kind of do what needs to be done to make it happen, and that's what I think a lot of listeners can identify with. A lot of business owners have similar stories of figuring things out on the fly, falling with style. Excellent. That was an excellent dad moment. As a dad of 4 kids, I hope for the presence of mind to recall an awesome story like that from a movie, or an awesome moment from a movie to apply perfectly to a kid who's going through an issue. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to ask you, what came to mind, is earlier you mentioned that you paid your way through college, that you did go to college. You grew up in what people would call blue collar home, where your dad was flipping houses. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic. Some of what I've heard over the years is blue collar work gets a bad rap, but it seems to me like you were exposed to both worlds, and somewhere along the line you chose that your best route for success was going to lie in leading blue collar work. Like, why that? What is your attitude towards that, even that term, blue collar?
Yeah, I mean, blue collar versus white collar. I like to have fun and joke, and I don't think my personality would fit in a corporate office. I'd probably get called down to HR every day.
Just because you don't wear shoes, that's like the biggest reason.
Yeah, I mean, blue collar can be really fun. I mean, and with the industry dying like it is, and when I say the industry, I mean, just people working a trade is kind of dying, and it's been dying for a long time. I think that sorry, I have to plug my computer in here. It's about to die. The good thing is we have an editor that can edit all that out. Okay. So I love blue collar. I wouldn't fit into the white collar world. Like I said, I would get called into HR every day, and yeah, I love the camaraderie that blue collar brings. And I think there's a brotherhood there that I've always been exposed to, and that I've always enjoyed being around. There's jokes that are classic and to be made, and it's fun to be around it. So you don't have to light the world on fire being a tech genius, in my opinion. If you do, that's totally awesome. But I think I've just had a really good time doing what I do. I enjoy working with my hands, and any situation I can always help someone out with. If something gets screwed up, I have a tool bag. I can go out and I can help.
Yeah, you mentioned the camaraderie. There is something. There's something special about being in the trenches, doing any kind of blue collar type work. When you're in the trenches with a group of employees, it's just like there is a camaraderie that is kind of unique. Yeah,
it's your mom jokes. That's what it is. That's what it boils down to.
You've told your fair share of that.
Yeah, your mom. Yeah, your mom's so that. Yeah.
I also think there is something to be said for taking a different route than everybody. There's something to be said for taking a different route than everyone else is taking. And in a world where, like you said, blue collar work and the trades are dying, saying, "Hey, I'm willing to do the hard work." And not only that, but I'm willing to lead other people to do it. There's an opportunity there that where everyone else is clamoring for other types of jobs, you're saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to lead the way. As a friend of ours said, you decided to be the king of the midgets.
Yeah, I am the king of the midgets right now, but we'll the king of the midgets comment though is just where we are at monetarily compared to everyone else. Like Beltway is not a big dog in the industry. Like we're not like the biggest, but we're king of the midgets. So like we're getting bigger, and we're bigger than the smaller guys. So, yeah. I asked me my goal is to not be king of the midgets 2 years from now.
There's another way to look at that term, and that is to do work that other people aren't willing to do. And it doesn't take a whole lot to stand out. If you have integrity in the trades, you can be the first thought of business. If you are willing to bring your integrity and your character and your excellence to a type of work that other people have avoided doing, then you get a chance to be the king. All right, I want to move on to another question. What would you say your greatest influences are? It could be a superhero, it could be a relative, but who do you look at that
like
were your
who
greatest
are my
influences?
Heroes? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, your heroes, your influences.
I'm a big Spider-Man fan. Love me some Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland. Andrew Garfield can kick rocks, but he's not so bad where it's like I would never watch his movies, but it's like you're kind of relevant, man. But if they made a third one, anyway.
Did you read the actual comics?
Yeah. Yep. Comic.
All right.
YouTube
All right. We
polls.
share this.
I got it down. But I would say my heroes are the men around me and my wife. Those are my heroes. So the men around me, because I grew up in a dysfunctional household, people addicted to drugs, alcohol, pills, that whole thing, heroin, had to deal with that a lot. So I clung to the church. The church had men in it, and those men helped form me. And my dad's always been a great influence on my life as well. And then my wife, I wouldn't be where I am today without my wife, for sure. In the early years of this business, we talk about the story and it's multi-million-dollar, whatever, who cares? None of that would have happened if it wasn't for my wife. She gave, I remember a time she was very good with money. And, we were dating at the time. And I said, hey, I need $10,000 to buy equipment and then also to pay payroll this week. And while we were dating, she gave it to me. She trusted me that much. And we, I was able to pay the equipment and I was able to pay her back 3 days later when the check cleared. But yeah, she's my hero, not because she's good with money, but she's always supported me very well. And she's really, she's the foundation. I come home to a very healthy home and, she's the one who is always advocating for that, and she has a background in social work, and a background in social work also means a background in psychology, because a lot of our classes overlap. And like my last therapist, she was actually a social worker, so that their stuff overlaps a lot. My wife can sometimes be my therapist. It's healthy to go see one and not make it a spouse, but she really keeps me level-headed, and she does a lot. And then the men around me, I think that's the biggest thing that I got from Crucible, which is a thing that Nate and I've gone to. It's a Christian-based weekend where you go in and you learn how to be a better person and work on stuff about your past and yada yada. But the biggest thing I remembered is when all of when you leave, everyone says goodbye and we circle up and each person gets an opportunity to say goodbye to each other one by one. And I realized all of those men are going to hold me accountable to be a good man. And all of those men that I just walked away from, because all of them were men I had a good relationship with. And Nate, you were one of them there. All of those men are not going to let me fail. All of those men there have helped form me and have taken me in. I've lived with some of them given me money to make it by, have given me food or just listened to me talk when I was going through a tough time. I owe a lot of that to you and the men around me. So those are my three heroes: Spider-Man, the men around in my community, and my wife.
That's good. You can't really get any better than that. That humility is really, really refreshing. I think a lot of people would envy the connection, the support that you've had, because I think sadly a lot of people don't have that in their life. And so to hear you say that success was something that you're standing on the shoulders of other men, your wife, and even Spider-Man. I think that's pretty awesome. I think that's pretty awesome. It shows humility. All right. Next question is
you got more?
I got another question, man. What's the last great book that you read or movie that you watched?
Man, I'll tell you what, you love the movie Bullet Train. You were willing to watch.
No, this isn't my interview. This is you. This is you.
What movie did I walk away from? And I was like, man, that was a good movie. Because of the holidays, we haven't watched a ton of movies. One movie I watch once a year, though, is The Founder, the story about Ray Kroc and how he took over the McDonald's brothers.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah. I learned something new every time I watch that movie because my mindset's in a different place. Because when you're in a mindset of a guy in a truck versus I have 1 and 2 employees, and now I have 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 employees, your mindset is always changing. So there's always something to be learned from in that movie. So I think that's probably one of my best business, and when it relates to business, that's definitely one of the best ones.
I'm going to I have like at least 10 questions that just popped into my head about that movie. I feel like we could have another podcast just talking about that movie. I have mixed feelings about that story. Yeah, that's such a great movie.
Real quick, there's the movie made it seem like A, but what actually happened was C. So there's a lot of documentary.
So you can educate me.
I know this. I've done my research, my friend.
Yeah, because it's also the
go with that movie for sure.
It's the example that one of the formative books for us is the E-Myth. Yeah. It's the example that they use. They use McDonald's as an example in that book of how to create a business that runs on its own. And I think that's kind of where I want to end. I want to end this by saying, like, in observing you, like, we've gotten to work really up close together for the last couple months. And this podcast is one of the pieces of that puzzle that came out of that. But for years, I have seen you fairly up close. And I've been able to see the way you've started Beltway and the way you've created this company. And I have a ton of respect for that. And one of the examples that I think that you're one of the greatest business leaders that I know personally. And my evidence for that is the fact that when we talk during a business day, a regular work day, your phone isn't ringing all day long. Your company has systems in place where people are equipped to run after what they're good at, and Beltway runs on its own. And you have to get involved. Yes, you keep tabs on things, but your whole day, like, you're living the dream of the small businessman in my mind. Your whole day isn't consumed with putting out fires, which means that you're the type of leader that's created those systems. So I think our listeners are going to get a lot of nuggets of wisdom from you because you're doing it well.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. If anyone ever needs to reach out to me, you can reach out to the info@giantweight.com. You can also email me at ryan@beltwayhvac.com. I'm not a hard person to find. You can also Facebook, Instagram, anything. I'm on it. So,
all right, man. Thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit better, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right.